When people ask me what is my one fondest memory of climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, I think that they want to hear that it was the moment that I reached the summit after 6 days of climbing. And that first moment that I saw that green sign that says, "Welcome, you are now on the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro, over 19,000 feet, the tallest freestanding mountain in the world." But actually, the fondest memory I have of Mount Kilimanjaro happened on the very first night. In order to get up the mountain and to combat altitude sickness, I was on a medication. And the one possibly bad side effect of the medication was actually that you absolutely had to pee in the middle of the night. You just couldn't sleep 8 hours. That was just how it was. So it was the first night. I was at 13,500 feet. We were at our first camp, and they had set our tent up, and I had gone to sleep for a few hours, and then I woke up, and it was maybe 1 o'clock in the morning. And I remember kind of being a little sleepy, a little groggy, unzipping the tent, walking out and trying to orient myself to the barren, rocky ground and try to find the bathroom. And then, by chance, I looked up and I saw the most amazing sight that I had ever seen in the world. Because we were on a mountain in Africa, there were so many stars. But this was the first time in my life that I'd actually seen the Milky Way. That wasn't in a picture, it wasn't in a National Geographic video, it was the actual Milky Way. It was standing there out in the sky in front of me. And I thought to myself, as I looked that deeply into the sky, that the rest of this trip might be a way for me to look really deeply into myself and into my own soul. Because just as I had to take a flight halfway around the world to Africa and walk away from all the light pollution and sound pollution and chores of my daily life, to be able to see past the light pollution into the sky, what was really out there, I could also use this trip to take away all the chores and all the schoolwork and all the 40-hour work weeks that were standing in the way of me seeing what was really inside myself. So I learned 3 big lessons in Mount Kilimanjaro, and I will share them with you today. The first one is that you have to have the right tool for the job. And the second one is that you have to have a team. You can't go and accomplish anything just by yourself. And the third one is that you have to travel at the speed of your own body, not the speed of your thoughts. So I did summit Mount Kilimanjaro in July 2014. It took us 5 days to get to the top and 2 days to get back down. And that was preceded by 6 months of climbing mountains all through the Northeast, where I used to live, in upstate New York, including Mount Washington, which is one of the most dangerous mountains to climb because of the vicious weather that can come in at any moment, even during the summer. So it was the lessons that I learned from that climbing and from Mount Kilimanjaro that has allowed me to learn these lessons that I'll share with you today. The first lesson is that you have to have the right tool for the job. And before I went to Mount Kilimanjaro, I thought it would be something that was in this gear bag. This is my actual bag that I took to Mount Kilimanjaro. And it looks big when it's empty, but actually you have to fit all of your toiletries in here. You have to fit all of your clothes that you're gonna wear and all of the gear that you're gonna take with you. And you have to fit your sleeping bag and your sleeping pad all inside this bag, because your porter is going to carry this bag up to every single camp for you. And actually, though I went on all kind of websites and made the best decisions that I could for the gear that was going in that bag. The most important tool that I took to Mount Kilimanjaro was actually right here in between my ears. It was my mindset. And that mindset was one that instead of turning away from pain, I had to turn towards it. I had to face it, and I had to be curious and open towards what was happening in my body. Every day that we went up in altitude, it was difficult. And that summit night, I had to say yes so many times. Every time that we took a break, there was an option to turn back and not summit. And I had to get up from every break and say yes. In the first 2 hours of that summit night, I totally emptied my entire gut. And at 4 hours into the summit night, I tried to eat something, a cereal bar that I brought for me for food for that night, and it had frozen solid that I couldn't even get a piece off. So I had no food. And about 5 or 6 hours into the summit night, even though we had used a cover on our cord to our water supply, the water supply froze. So at that point, I had no more water because it was frozen. And yet, every single time that we took a break, I had to stand back up and say, yes, I will continue climbing. And it was that mindset that I gotten from every single hike that I did on the weekends before that said, you just say yes. One more time, you get back up. Every run that I do, you could choose to stay in, or you could choose to say yes and get up and do that run, and every single hike. So that was the right tool for the job, was a positive mindset. And my second lesson that I learned was to depend on others. And if everyone wants to see on the table, I have copies of pictures, and I'll let you look at the bottom picture there for a few minutes, and then I'll talk to you about it. This is a picture of the team, the men that got me up this mountain. And you can see me in the front, and then you can see my husband is next to me. And every other person in that picture is from Africa. Most of them are from the Chaga tribe, which is the local tribe around Mount Kilimanjaro. And they did everything for me so that I could achieve my goal. They carried the bag up. They made the food. They carried the water from water sources which were close at one camp and a day's travel away when we were going close to the summit. They talked to us when we were tired, and they gave us words of advice from these men who had climbed this mountain so many times. And they helped me when I started to get altitude sickness. They made sure that I drank water and that I was safe. And I think there's a myth that the mountain climber or the adventurer is a lone wolf, and they can do these great feats because of the strength of their body themselves. When the truth that I found is in everything I do, there's a team behind me. And that group, the strength of that group and everyone helping one another is how I got up that mountain and how I've done everything in my life. So that was my second deep lesson, is that I need a team. I depend on a team to do everything. And it's not just me, it's everyone working together. And the final lesson is that I have to travel at the speed of my body. I learned that twice, really poignantly, really specifically on this hike. The first time was that first night, and we had, the bag was delivered to the tent, and we'd just done our first hike, and I thought, oh, this is only 13,000 feet. Like, I've gone further up in America, and so this should be perfectly fine for me. And I remember getting on my knees and unrolling my sleeping bag, and then we had an inflatable sleeping pad. And the guy had said, your porter will inflate your pad. But I thought I was really strong and I could do it myself. So I remember kneeling and taking the pad and taking one really deep breath and blowing it into the pad, and then struggling to get in another breath. And I just looked at the pad and I looked at myself and I said, I can't do this, and I'm at 13,000 feet. And I'm so glad that that porter is there, because my body has been hiking all day and I am just to the edge of where I can't even inflate a pad. So my porter did. His nickname actually became Tatu Mbili because I learned a little bit of Swahili before I went. So the big joke was that I was the one person who could order beers, two beers, Tatu Mbili, in Swahili. So my porter took on my nickname, which was Tatu Mbili. So Tatu Mbili definitely helped me every night. And the guides helped us every day. There's a term that everyone who climbs Mount Kilimanjaro knows, and it's pole pole, which means slowly, slowly, which is how you hike, one step at a time, sometimes painfully slowly on the summit, but it's necessary. And I learned that we were 100 feet from the summit, so close. I saw the sign, I knew where I was going, and Kapange, who's the guide, was in front of me, and I was the first person in the line of the people in our expedition. And he saw a girl, and he walked over to talk to her. And I said, this is my chance. Like, I'm just gonna walk right up there and get in first before anyone else, because I walked all night and I can totally do this. And I tried to take 2, 3 fast steps, and I could not walk any faster than he had us walking all night. And that's when I learned again that I have to travel at the speed of my body. And that speed, when you're at over 19,000 feet, is literally one step at a time. But my thoughts traveled much faster at 2 o'clock in the morning. I was looking at my watch, and we were asking Kapange, how much longer? When are we going to get to the summit? And I learned that night that when I practiced concentrating just on my breathing and just on this breath, this step, this breath, this step, that I was able to find inside my body enough energy to keep on going the whole night. But when my brain started thinking, and my thoughts were, how much farther is it up there? How much longer after the dawn? Why isn't the moon moving? I've been hiking for 2 hours, it seems, since the last time we looked at the moon, and why isn't the sun up? This is the longest night. It's July 11th, but it is the longest night of the year, because my thoughts were traveling faster than my body. And when I started fading out my thoughts and focusing on the speed of my body and how fast I was traveling and the present moment, I was able to take on the entire night of hiking and not feel the frustration that I felt in the moments when I was just thinking of the future and when I was going to get to the top and how I was going to get back to the bottom and whether the plane ride back to Amsterdam was going to be on time or not. So that was the third lesson, to travel at the speed of my body. So I've shared 3 lessons that I learned from climbing Mount Kilimanjaro. The first lesson was that you have to have the right tool for the job. The second lesson was that you can't do it alone. There's got to be a team behind you that gives you strength. And the third lesson was, for me, in everything that I do, I have to travel at the speed of my body. I'm very grateful that my husband decided to climb Mount Kilimanjaro and that I decided to raise my hand and say, yes, let's do it. And I'm very grateful